Take us on a journey from sitting there making your napkin notes of what the next knife's going to look like and how you're going to design it, and then the process of designing it. Once you get it designed, how do you get it? Are you farming it out to multiple makers? Do you have a few that you just go to all the time and you get pricing? What makes you decide if you're buying 20 of them or 2,000 of them? Kind of take us down that road.
Okay. And most of the time I do designing before the fact. So I already have a design done, but now and then you'll get a company like CRKT, Spyderco, or somebody who wants a variation of a knife, right? So most of the time it comes from me. I make a knife and they're interested in that knife. And once I have that prototype done, usually I have a couple people who do prototypes for me. I have Vance out of Colorado. I have Brent out of New Jersey. I have a guy, LMS, out of Los Angeles. And then I have some overseas people who handle some of my prototypes and actually make manufacturing. So it depends what I'm doing. If I'm doing an automatic or OTF, it's in the States because that's what the law requires, right?
Yep.
In the past, I would do something, what I would consider like Frankenstein. I would get the parts cut out overseas and really design them so they can slap onto a machine and they could actually go from there. And the reason I did that is because material costs, right? If I already have the outline of the knife and get it cut out over there, I'm not buying a sheet of steel, right? I'm just buying from them what I call blank.
Right.
Some people don't like that. They still say it's sort of cheating. You're going overseas and getting stuff done, even though most of the material we get is from overseas anyway, right? If most of our steels come from overseas, there's only a few companies that make them in the U.S., right? And titanium is the only titanium found and made in America always goes to military. There is no titanium sold and dug out of the ground that most people can buy from the USA. So any titanium you get from any knife maker, they might say all USA made, but the material usually isn't. Most of our steels too, we use M390. That's made by Boiler in Germany. And so most of the steels are coming from overseas anyway. So I thought I would just save money and just make blanks. But most people don't like that. So most of the time from start to finish for me is I design a knife. I do all my designs in CAD. I'm going to use old school. I use SolidWorks because that's what that was the king back in my day. Us, we're 30 years ago. It was SolidWorks and AutoCAD was pretty much it.
Yeah.
SolidWorks was better because I'm in the industry anyway, and I had to use SolidWorks for work. And SolidWorks it's made for manufacturing, right? So I can make a part and I can actually move it and see how it moves. It tells you where it rubs against. It tells you if it's not enough room in there. SolidWorks is a really powerful 3D.
And you're doing everything in 3D, no 2D stuff?
2D. The only thing I do 2D, if you ever see my files, I do 2D simply because it gives you dimensions, right?
Yeah.
So I do 2D, but it's all for dimensional issues and tolerances, right? I put my tolerances there and dimensions there. And that's
you're creating it in 3D and then you're just exporting that 3D into a 2D and then laying on your dimensions and everything. You're not actually drawing the same part twice, are you?
Well, you usually start from 2D and then you build upon that. Then I say 2D, I make a 2D part. I'll say it's, 0.125 thick. SolidWorks will take it 0.125 up. Then I'll start carving. When I start carving it and developing the shape of it, right?
Okay.
Then I have to go on the inside and carve out where the bearings fit, or this fits and that fits. So I think everything starts from 2D and then you sort of extrapolate up from 2D. Now, once I have let's say a knife, let's say it's a flipper, right? And I have all those dimensions and tolerances all dialed in. a lot of times I'll grab what I call the internal structure of that and then build a knife around that. And in that way, I save myself a lot of time.
Yeah. You
Right?
got the base work done.
I had
Hey,
the
Darriel,
base done.
I'm sorry, this actually is something I was going to ask. This is my operational brain. So talking right to that very point, it sounds like most every design is fairly unique and custom. However, and this is the question, you've done designs, X number of them. I don't want to call it a template, but there has to be some sort of even a mental template or guide that you probably use. But otherwise, is it fair to say that each of those designs are truly custom as you go?
Yes, I would say they're custom. I would say I have a couple cheats there, right? Because the hardware, if I buy them off the shelf, let's say off the shelf, it's there's only so you have 0.125 pivots, right? Then you have 3/16 pivots, or you have this. So those are pretty much well established in our industry, right? So those are sort of givens that I can work around. But I would say most of it, you could say, is pretty much custom work, because I would consider myself a designer that's not in the box, right? If I get something weird and something pop in my head, there's a possibility I might use that pivot to start, but then I'll shave off everything else. And so almost start from scratch. I will use that pivot for like my North Star, right? Where I can build everything around. But most of my designs, I would say, just because, like I said before, I'll be watching an anime with my son, and all of a sudden the guy, the cartoon guy will whip out a knife and, slice that robot up. And I'm like, God damn, that knife looks pretty damn cool, right? And I'll take a picture of it. My son hates it, man. We're in the middle of the show, and I'll freeze it and say, wait a minute, and I'll take a picture of it. And then I'll take that and develop a knife or something around it, or something similar. Now he doesn't like me stopping there, but if you go to his room, almost every anime knife I made is sitting, on his shelf. Even if I have it here in my office, I'll like, Monica, what happened to that knife? I saw your son flicking and flipping it all through the house yesterday. It was driving me crazy. I told him to, go back to his room. So that happened. So
that's hilarious. I'm so sorry. So all the way down to every individual component, that's part of, the design work that you're referring to, even to things like springs, or even the little pieces of metal that hold the springs.
Yes. And there, some websites or some companies will have that 3D file for their pivot or something like that. So sometimes you can grab that stuff and slap it in there. And then, like I said before, use it as another North Star to work around. So, but, I've been doing this for so long, I probably have every file that I need, down to the automatic springs that are used in our automatics, right? So because I've been doing it. So I'll grab that, and I'll have favorites. Like Tie Connector makes a automatic spring, and he has the 3D file, so he gave me the 3D file for it. So I can build my automatics around the springs I love, or the hardware I love,
So like on the out the fronts that I did for you, was that spring and the arms on each end? Is that somebody else's design that you have adopted, or is that your design?
That's still my design.
Okay.
But the spring in it, I will go to leaf springs, and I'll have that spring sort of dialed in for me, right? And then they'll make, 3 or 4, 5, 600 of them that I could use, from then on. I can't say on the OTFs that I was the original designer. I might have done tweaks and changes to fit my style in it. But the OTF has been around, I would say, good 30, 40 years solid. Not from Montreal, and Microtech, but you can go even further to some other of the old guys that done it. And Marfion or Microtech learned how to make it from that guy. So I would say the original base might have been from that person. But as we gone along and materials have changed, and the ability to use CAD to do some redesigning and stuff like that, I would say my mechanisms and stuff are different. you could say another variation beyond or two than from those original.
I mean, I was surprised with
usually. I'm sorry, and you go ahead.
I was surprised with your mechanism on when you deploy that out the front. If it deploys into something, of course, it has a clutch on it, doesn't go out all the way. But when you pull the blade on yours to reset it, you almost don't even feel it click. It's so smooth where the Kershaw's, the live wire Kershaw, the Microtechs, I mean, I sell a lot of both of those, and they both have the same feel. I mean, it is like pull it and it plunks into spot. So I was just really surprised at how much smoother yours is on actually putting it back into service if it does hit something on the way out and doesn't deploy all the way.
Yeah, and I think, and this gets me in trouble too. I always find most automatics and OTFs to have too much clunk, right? Some of them jump out of your hands. Like you almost feel like you have to grip that sucker like a hawk and it'll fly out your hands. I always thought that was too much. So on the Katana X, let me turn my phone off real quick. So anyway, so on the OTF for me, and for how I like something, I really like smooth as butter, and I don't like that clunk. I don't want it to jump out of my hands. I want it just to be like a smooth slide. But when I made the Katana X OTF, that was what I had in mind, and that product didn't really sell as well as I thought it would because people were expecting that big old clunk. They thought maybe, I misdesigned it or I made a mistake on it, right? Because it sort of comes out like butter, right? It just goes, it doesn't go get that clunk. And so I didn't sell those because people expected something that they were used to, right?
Yeah, and what I was wondering if it is definitely smoother and feels nicer in their hand, but does that lead to more not fully firing or fully retracting because it is so smooth? Or does that not matter at all?
It doesn't matter at all. The only thing, if you have lint or something in your pocket, that's like any OTF. You don't clean it and you do it it's going to do that. You still have to maintain your equipment to a certain degree. Sometimes you got to oil it, right?
Yeah, and I know that on yours, taking them apart isn't that bad. I know a lot of people that won't take a Microtech apart or anything else, and they're very similar on the inside, but in my experience, I've Cerakoted lots of Microtechs, and a lot of times pulling that last screw out, they kind of explode in front of you. And it's not so bad if you know how they go back together, but, I've done quite a few of yours now, and I've never had one come apart till I took it apart.
Yeah, and Matt will tell you, when we designed like the Zulu, we wanted it so people can exchange. Say you bought two Zulus, you bought a black one and you bought an Ultim one. You should be able to change them fairly easy. That was the sort of the point of it. So if you wanted to put the top half to be Ultim and the bottom half to be black aluminum, it was no problem to switch it. If you wanted to change the blades, if you had a dagger blade, but then you wanted to put in a Warren clip blade, you should be able to do that fairly easy and with no issue. Well, that was part of when I designed it, it was so I wanted people to take it apart and play with it. And people need to know how to take apart their knives and take care of it. Because I want my knives to be an heirloom quality product, right? I want you to be able to hand it down to your kid. Right. And if the blade wears out, you can say, Darriel Caston, can I go buy a blade? And I say, well, I don't have the dagger blade, but I might have the Warncliffe blade. You can slap it right in there and keep on going.
Yeah, no.
Or your kid.
And you can't get all the lint and stuff out of those knives, any of the autos, without taking them apart. It's impossible.
Correct. And as Matt would tell you, when we made the Ultim one, the oil was too thick, right? So here in the hot summer when we were making them in California, they work like a charm, Then we send it to Matt in a little bit colder weather and a little bit more humidity, and they were sticking like a sucker, right? And we're like, what the hell is going on here? Because I tested them all, right? Then we find out the oil, in temperature changes and humidity changes was just too thick. So we had to go to a lighter. I think Matt sent 50 of them back to our repair shop so he can clean them out and put new oil in it. So it's still a learning process for me, right? There's those little things will catch you that you didn't think would catch you.
Oh, yeah,
And we
for
still
sure.
work with that, meaning we'll routinely, especially Darriel, with the recent exchange that we have with the ultra thin product, that as we pull those off and QC them when they go out the door, are we perfect? No, but the idea is if something engages 10 times, then great, it's gone. It works. But if it doesn't pass, it gets set aside and it either goes out or we'll oil it, or heck, Andy, bring it to you.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that versatility really across all the knives of being able to exchange your handles, exchange your blades, and truly and easily open them and put them back together.
Yeah. And the Zulu is a good seller. I have to do another run fairly soon, but I as you know me, you get to know me. Sometimes I don't like to go back to design. I'll probably have some variation of the Zulu a little bit, maybe change it from that top button to a side button, maybe change the blade a little bit. What works well for me is I call that second stage, like Cerakoting. So I really think about my knives becoming art knives to a certain degree. I like to keep that ability in them. And that's one of the reasons I went to titanium on the small 007. I'll probably do a titanium Zulu also, because you can get some beautiful colors and laser engraving on them. And I think that adds to our brand. But to go back to what you're saying, so after I design everything, right, I'll send it depends what I'm doing. Because some knives I know so well, I can sort of go straight to production, right, on some things. But most of the time I do prototype just because I want to feel it in my hand and see if there's an issue or a slight change I want to make on the knife. So if it's an OTF or something like that, I might send it advanced. But there's times where I might have the blades done by LMS down in LA, then I'll have Vance do the handles, and then I might have Robert put them all together and test.
Okay.
So I do that quite a bit. I really do like using veterans and these young guys. Two things happen, right? So I want to keep our community growing and strong, and I want I would love to have a larger stable of manufacturers in America. So that's important to me. So given these young guys, I probably get contacted, I would say at least 10 times a month by some young guy who wants to try something or do something, if I could help them with it or want to collaborate. And I usually say yes to most of them, not all of them, but most of them. You know, some of them will send me a picture of the work and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be too much work for me, to get this person ready. But then you have these young machinists that are really sharp already, and they're really sharp with the CAD, and that makes it easier. Like Vance, he approached me at show. He's probably my number one manufacturer at this moment. He approached me at the show and he says he's been watching me for a while and he thinks he's pretty good. And he brought his knife. He gave me one of his knives he made at the show. And he said, look at it, play with it. I think I could help you. And I was really impressed with his work. So, and I was impressed that how he came at me. He met me at the show. He showed me his product. He talked about what he did. He gave me a little bit of his history. He gave me a knife to play with for the next week or so. Then he followed up and called me and said, is there something we could do together? And then from there, we developed a really good relationship. The same with Brent and a couple others. I like that person who's here to work, who's here to get somewhere.
Right.
Even if it's just for them, we can roll together for a while. We learn from each other. I think also working with these younger guys, you get another perspective. Every machinist does something a little bit different, right? They might have been trained similar, but as they go along, they find all these little secrets and stuff for them. And I'm able to absorb those secrets too. They might say, well, Darriel, if you flip the blade straight up, I use the side cut of the mill to do my blade grinding, right? And it cuts more material at one time, and you have smoother passes. And I learned that from Zodiac Engineering, and I'll pass it on to another guy. Let's flip the blade, edge up and cut it from the side. Things like that you learn from other people. Your knowledge grows if you're open to it.
Right. So you got this new knife. It's manufactured. You're sitting on them. How are you going to sell them? What's the next step? How do you go through that process?
Well, for a lot of my knives, it's just word of mouth. People see it on Instagram. But as I'm getting bigger, this is where Matt comes in, with his marketing background. He's taken over the golf tools, and we'll sit down and we'll talk about how we attack, our marketing strategy. In the past, I just slap it on Instagram and say, you guys want these knives? They'll be on site so-and-so, so-and-so. But as I get bigger and my, how can I put it? The order number gets bigger, right? I used to just do about 25 to 50 knives at a time. Now I went to 100. Now I'm about 300 knives at a time. Next, we're talking, about working with companies like Walmart and stuff like that. Now the whole thing sort of changes, right? The whole idea, it's not 500 knives and 1,000 knives, it might be even more. So
it also becomes an operation.
Yeah.
So
I have to get more people to help me. I can't do all social media. So I have a young lady, Bailey, that Matt mentions earlier, who does my social media. Then her boyfriend does my content. It leads me to focus on that manufacturing process of get material, design, looking at the prototypes, tweaking the design if I have to. It gives me a little bit more freedom. I think more and more as I go along, I'm going to need the expertise of other people that really keep me, get me overwhelmed. Because sometimes I feel overwhelmed. I'm like, I tell my wife, what the hell am I doing?
Well, you have to make it fun, right? I mean, it's probably the most simplest thing that any of us could say. Really, Andy, one of the things that we talked about recently in terms of marketing and how you sell your product, it really starts maybe from the very beginning before you even make the product. And all I mean by that is obviously Darriel has his day-to-day. We'll just call it that. And that's his bread and butter. That's the enjoyable, the design, everything that we're talking about. But as he has grown and is growing, then it's about, more laser focused on, call it what a particular market wants or needs. But at the same time, he lives in that market. So the insights and the intel that he can gather and gain and then ultimately spew back out into what we might call a marketing strategy, to be a little more focused, to then talk about, is it this blade? Is it an automatic? Is it slip knot? Whatever it is that we're going into the market with, it is all encompassed. The things that, of course, you've seen some collaborations to Schofield piece, as well as to some of his own products, the Zulus, like we were just talking about. But as things continue to grow, it certainly has become an operation, Darriel. And the most important part, I'll finish where I started. It's got to stay fun. You have to continue to have that drive and that designer mentality.
And it helps that we have victories, right? We've been doing pretty well and having some really good, even the small victories add up, right? So that helps. And, having the right people around you. The more and more you go into this, you really need to have some kind of enjoyable connection with the people you work with, and once you have that, and if you have the people around you that believe in your product, right? They see it and say, oh my God, we can really make this work, right? That really helps keep you together. And also, you also need the people that keep you in check, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, I could probably do prototyping for the next 10 years and be happy, but that's not really a business, right? We got to pick the right product, get it out there, make money and get a good reputation and just keep on growing. For me, this is not just a long-term project. I'm hoping this will slide me into my retirement years, right? That, I want to keep busy. I know some people probably want to just sit around and do golf. I'm not going to mention any names or anything like that, but I need to keep busy. My mind works like that, right? So I can
how
see
many people
too doing this.
So how many people you have around you that work with you on it?
Oh, man, it depends. So I would say my core people are probably about 5. I got Matt, Vance, Brent, Bailey, and Ryan. Those are probably my main people that I work on a constant basis on. But then there's people that I do a lot of work with, like Race Wu from Dots. He does some of our product for us too, but I also do some designs and licensing with him also. And I consider him a pretty major part of my group of people, right? I'm also working with a young man from Finland. A company from Finland contacted me at the SHOT Show, and we're going to do some projects together that will roll out Blade Atlanta. And, there's something about, working with different cultures too, that you learn a lot from. I find that the European crowd or community, they really are into not just a cutting instrument, but something that feels good in their hands, that has a little bit of artistic value to it. They're really hungry for new designs. They're really hungry for something different. They're tired of traditional slip joints. Let's put it that way. So,
I had this question earlier, and you just reminded me of it. And this may be too broad, but even if there's one or two things. So you were talking about your design and obviously your process. And we even built off some of those inspirations from the previous conversation. When you're going into that collaboration, what's one or two things that you really want from the other party to help you with your design process?
You know what? This is going to sound silly, but I sometimes look for a person who has a little bit of humility, right? I don't like a huge ego, right? Because I've worked with some collaborators with egos, and I might have a design, then it gets changed to completely their design, what they think it should be. They don't really want input. They really just want to use me, ride my coattails to get somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I really hate that. I like when these young guys come to me and say, I have a lot to learn. I want a collaboration. I want to work with you. I want it to have the DNA of both of us to a certain degree, and I'm not saying I have to take the lead per se, but usually the best thing is when I have a design or idea of design, and I'll throw it at them and they'll add something and they'll throw it back. And it's almost like this ping pong effect, right? And we get faster and faster, and we get better and better as we go along. I like that. Working with somebody who has an ego, who comes at you with some underlying, something, they're not really there for you, right? Or the collaboration, they have their own thing they want to do, really, but they think you can get it there. I have people come to me and say, I want to buy that design from you. I never sell my designs. I say, well, if this works out, I might license it to you, but I keep the design, but I get so many people coming, hey, I'm going to get into the knife industry, and I want you to make me 3 designs, and I want completely control of the designs. And I might say, well, is my Rocket logo going to be on it? Is this a collaboration? No. You just make the design. I'll pay you $5,000 and that's it. I don't like that.
So you retain the IP on everything you do?
I retain the IP on everything you do. Everything. And it's not because I have my own ego. I just don't think that's a fair collaboration, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not.
You give them a design and also they make $1 million off it. What do you say? It just doesn't work for me. It might work for other people. I know there's people out there that design for people and they never once it's gone, it's gone. I think that could get you in trouble too, because like I said before, sometimes I make variations of designs, and I build on designs sometimes. I don't want the idea that they're saying, well, that design you sold me is too close to the other one. You have a Warncliffe blade and I've done a Warncliffe, because sometimes our community can get petty like that, right? I remember when I made my first bolt pin, and this still bothers me to this day. I made a bolt pin, and I what do you call them? The people on the internet that come after the trolls. The trolls hit me saying, well, so-and-so made a bolt pin before you, and you're just copying with the bolt pin, even though my bolt pins are totally different from anybody else's, right? Other than the bolt, there's nothing else that, you can see similar.
Right.
And they got nasty. I mean, they were talking about lynching me and hanging me from a tree, and it was ugly. I had never seen such ugliness
Over a pen.
over a pin, right?
Wow.
And we have that type of people in our community, these not desktop warriors, but these keyboard, angry people that will come after you about anything.
Oh yeah, I get it all the time too.
Yeah, and it's crazy. When you do your Cerakoting, you probably have somebody says, well, so-and-so's done that Cerakoting before. You're like, man, Cerakoting's been done for damn 50 years. People been painting stuff for what?
Yeah.
800 years, probably more than 800 years.
Yeah, there's always it's too easy to complain, so everybody does it.
Yeah.
So when are we going to see a D-Rocket knife in Walmart?
Well, July.
Really? What is it?
It's actually the CRKT, the Minimal X, the Space X version that I did for them.
It's going to be in the stores or just online?
It's going to be both. It's going to be a 3,800 stores.
Wow.
So
Can I get a picture of one of those? Can you send me one?
You know what? I got to put a package together for Matt, and I'll just put one, when I do these knives for them, they send me like 10 just to give away or send. I'll send you one when after the show. I usually send stuff back to Matt in the same package that he sent to me. And if there's anything left, I send it back to him. I'll just put one in there and you can look at it yourself and
Awesome.
play with it.
Okay. So the big question go ahead.
It's the new all black version too.
That's going to look pretty cool. So tell us a little bit about the Walmart. How'd that even happen? That's not an easy feat.
It's not an easy feat, but it was simply they saw the knife. Somebody in Walmart saw the knife. They did some kind of analyticals on me, and I don't know what the hell that means. Some kind of analyticals on that knife, and they talked to CRKT and did some analyticals on the knife and stuff. And it's just they found that the average worker loved using that knife. Once you get it, maybe we'll come back and we'll talk about that knife or something like that. So they did some kind of, some kind of crunching in the numbers on me, and they were happy with what they saw. And they asked CRKT if they can go through them, because CRKT already sells stuff through Walmart anyway. And the amount is huge. For 3,800 stores and online, it was something I couldn't do anyway.
Right.
At this point. So in a lot of my things, when I go to a show, a lot of the dealers and a lot of the people I work with, like Spyderco, Dots, Spoker, most of the time they've been watching me. And this is the thing that a reason I got social media people online and to help me. I have about 50,000 people that follow me. I would say 35,000 of those people are either dealers, or they're either companies, or they're other knife makers.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
And so I need to get more consumers and clients on that list. So that's what we're trying to work for. But most of the people that watch me are people who make themselves.
Yeah, they're peers in the industry, making sure you're not doing something they're not doing.
Yeah, that's right. Or, I think we were the first to do that cell shading on a knife. Now everybody's doing cell shading on a knife. It's just how it works. So I'll do something slightly different on a knife, then I'll see it pop up, all over the place. So, but that's okay, right? And I love it when somebody I don't like when people completely copy it, but I like when they evolve it, right? I say, oh, you evolved it. That's a good idea. I want to take that sucker and, evolve it even further. That doesn't bother me. And I think that's the best part of the community. We should all be working to bring it up. You know what I mean? Most of the stuff I've done, I just, evolved it. It's not like I came up with a knife. We go 30,000 years back in the, they were using obsidian knives. I didn't come up with a knife. I didn't come up with a folder knife, right? I didn't come up with the liner lock knife. Now there are mechanisms that I work on that are unique, right? But, they might be unique to the knife industry, but I might have got the idea from a watchmaker, right? How they did something. So
Yep.
Nothing in this world hasn't been done. Very rarely, but it might have evolved and become something, a little bit better.
Yep. When are we going to see an out the front that has a reversible clip on it for us lefties out there?
Man, that's a tough. Well, you can do it if you keep the you can do it if you keep the button on the side. That would be fairly easy, and I can do that. Hell, the next Zulu version, I'll make it, so you can reverse it.
Yeah, Matt's let me play around with one. What model is that one, Matt? The black one? No, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
No, I'm trying to think. It was one of the tactical ones that was, it's a tactical Zulu. I think that's what it was. Very much like the ones you just had. It's had a different blade.
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going to be able to just swap the blade backwards in it, which everything works except for the two detents where it catches the blade when it's fully out and fully retracted.
Oh, are you a left-hander?
Yeah.
Are you lefty? Well, let's do it. The next Zulu we'll make it so it's reversible really easy.
Yeah. And that's why I always like the Microtex and some of the live wires from Kershaw, because they're very easy to just swap around.
Okay. Do you have a favorite? The clip? Well, the Microtex simply has a screw in the back, so you could just unscrew the back and flip it over.
Yeah. And the Kershaw live wire is very similar to yours, but it's dead center, so it can flip either way.
Okay.
Where yours is offset just a hair.
All right. I'll make sure that comes into play. My daughter's a left-handed person, so she talks about that a little bit also.
And do you do any fixed blades or everything some type of folder?
No, I just finished a fixed blade. Let me grab it since we were talking.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not meeting right now. That's my son. He just back from school. So here is the new D-Rocket design fixed blade. My first fixed blade. This is a prototype.
Wow, that's cool.
So I wanted to use that same blade that we use on the Maximum X and Minimal X, since it's done so well, and make it a camp knife, right? So it can be used, in a camping or a military operation. You don't have to worry about the blade getting broken or stuff because it's pretty sturdy, right?
That looks very nice.
And you can actually bang on the top. What do they call it? When they need to cut wood, they need to bang on it.
I know what you're talking about.
The K, Cabana. That is it.
That is very cool. So is that being made by one of your existing manufacturers?
Yes, that's going to be made for the guy at Taiwan.
Okay, they make the schist also?
Yes.
Okay.
So I had
What's
to design
the handle made out of?
Knife. Yeah.
What's the handle made out of?
Well, this one right here is actually the same steel that's used here. M390 is underneath it, and then it has a top handle of carbon fiber. So you can see it. So then I have one here, Ultim.
Wow.
Then I have one right here is a micarta, brown micarta.
Cool.
So are those all in the prototype stage, or will you?
They're finalized, but I want to be able to give people a chance to pick their handle material or change their handle material fairly easy.
Well, that was my next question. Are you going to be able to swap it out if you want to do something different?
Oh, you mean the handle?
Yeah, the handle material.
Yeah, you can swap it out.
Okay.
So, and I probably will make another version that's completely steel, just one piece, for the people who don't need a handle material, they don't care. They just want something that can, take a beating and keep going and stuff like that. So I will probably do that also, or I'll make the handle material like a metal or something that you can take in and out. That's probably the easiest way to do it. But I'm working with another person collaboration, and this is that. And I also did a folding axe, and it folds down to about the size of a large phone.
Well,
And we should have that at Blade Show Atlanta. And it turned out really well. We decided not to show it yet until we have it all completely dialed in. But once that's in, maybe we can do another show on like camping material, fixed blades. I'll send you one and stuff like that. Maybe we have you guys test it on something. I don't know if you guys go out in the woods or something like that and hunting or something. Maybe do a show where we're actually using some of these products out in the woods or in an urban setting or whatever.
yeah,
That's
no,
what I would
definitely.
recommend. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to jump here shortly, but we have to do a show for D-Rocket Golf.
Yes.
It can be at the front or the tail end of the camping show. As Darriel, as we finalize what some of that market looks like, I'd love to have the opportunity to have one of those shows as well.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
Well, Darriel and Matt, we're rolling on about almost an hour, so we better cut this off. But we sure appreciate you guys coming back and visiting with us again and kind of completing this part 2. And we look forward to hearing more about it and different ways we can support each other.